This is my true story. I was a father who gave everything to my son, my strength, my money, my years. I thought family meant love, respect, and care in return. But on New Year's Eve, in the middle of music, drinks, and fireworks, my own blood showed me how wrong I was. My son looked at me with hatred and kicked me down the stairs in my own house. I lay broken on the floor while he laughed with his friends. My heart shattered, but I was not powerless. Before I continue, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is right now. And please subscribe so my story can reach more people. I was not born rich. My hands knew calluses before they knew comfort. From the day my son was born, my life stopped being about myself. Every shift I worked, every night I stayed late, every holiday I skipped, it was all for him. I wanted him to grow up with things I never had. I wanted him to walk on solid ground while I sank into mud. I wanted him to eat full meals even if I went hungry. That was the meaning of being a father to me. Sacrifice without limit. When he was small, I carried him on my shoulders. I worked double shifts so he could eat warm meals and wear clean clothes. I patched my own shoes while buying him new ones. I skipped doctor visits for my pain so I could pay for his school supplies. He never saw the weight I carried because I never let him. I wanted him to believe life was simple, life was safe. Behind that safety was my broken back, my tired body, and my sleepless nights. As he grew, the bills grew bigger. Education was not cheap, but I paid it. I sent him to schools he bragged about to his friends. I worked weekends to make sure he had books, uniforms, and a future. He never once had to worry about whether he would eat, whether he would have shelter, or whether he could study. I made sure of that. When he wanted more, I gave more. He asked for money for trips. I found a way. He wanted new clothes. I bought them. He wanted gadgets. I worked longer hours. When his debts piled up later, I stepped in and paid them quietly. He thought it was his own luck, but it was me, always me, standing in the shadows holding him up. Holidays were no different. While others celebrated, I worked. New Year's Eve shifts, Christmas nights, birthdays missed, all so he could celebrate without worry. He never saw me standing at machines while he was out with friends. He never saw me fall asleep in the corner after long days. He only saw the comfort, never the price. Even his career, his start in life, was funded by me. I paid for training, for rent, for interviews. I gave him the roof over his head when he had nothing. The very house he lived in as a man, the one he filled with friends and laughter, was mine. I built it with my money. I signed the deed with my name. He slept easy because I had broken myself to provide it. When he held parties, it was my money that paid for them. When he drank with friends, it was under my roof. When he laughed at the table, it was because I had given him everything. I never asked for thanks. I only asked for respect. That was all I wanted at the end of my life. Respect from the son I had raised. But respect never came. The more I gave, the more he demanded. The more I sacrificed, the less he saw. In his eyes, I was not the man who built his world. I was just an old shadow in his house. He forgot the years. He forgot the nights. He forgot the sweat and blood that paid for every brick, every plate, every bill. I thought New Year's Eve would be different. I thought it would be a night where we stood together, where he would remember family, where we could celebrate as father and son. I believed foolishly that he might finally look at me with pride instead of shame. I believed wrong. The truth was already there. I just refused to see it. Cruelty does not begin with a kick. It begins with looks, with words, with small cuts that grow deeper over time. My son's cruelty toward me began in whispers and sharp tones. At first, he seemed annoyed when I asked him simple questions. If I asked him to repeat something, he rolled his eyes. If I spoke during his conversations with friends, he cut me off. These were small things, but they carried weight. They were the beginning of the cracks. Then came the jokes. He started calling me old man in a voice that was not playful but sharp. He told his friends I was slow, clumsy, and useless around the house. He laughed when my hands trembled pouring tea. He mocked my coughs. What hurt most was not the words themselves, but the joy he found in saying them. He enjoyed making me small. As time went on, his tone changed completely. He stopped speaking to me with the respect a son owes a father. Instead, his voice was cold, impatient. If I asked about his work, he said, "It's none of your business." If I asked about bills, he said, "I'll handle it." You don't need to know he forgot that I was the one who had built the very life he now claimed as his own. I began to notice how he acted when his friends came over. To them, I was not his father. I was an inconvenience. He told me to stay out of sight. Once, he even said, "Go upstairs. You make the place look depressing." Imagine hearing that from the child you carried, fed, and raised. I obeyed in silence, but each word was like a stone pressed into my chest. He began treating me like I was a guest in my own house. If I sat in the living room, he told me to move. If I turned on the television, he grabbed the remote from my hand. He made it clear. The house was his now, not mine. But I knew the truth. The deed was still in my name. Every wall, every brick, every room still belonged to me. Yet he walked around as if I was the intruder. The arrogance grew worse with time. He started mocking my frailty openly. When I climbed the stairs slowly, he said, "Hurry up, old man, you'll die on the way." When I asked for help carrying groceries, he sneered, "Why don't you just stay inside? You're dead weight." Those words cut deeper than any wound. Dead weight. That was how he saw me, not as the father who sacrificed everything, but as baggage to be tossed aside. Relatives noticed, too. When they visited, they saw the way he spoke to me. Some stayed silent out of discomfort. Others made excuses for him. But no one stopped him. No one defended me. I was left alone to bear his cruelty, the same way I had once borne the weight of his future. The difference was that now, instead of gratitude, I received mockery. I still hoped, foolishly, that it was a phase. That stress made him harsh. That deep down, he still loved me. I told myself maybe one day he would wake up and remember who I was to him. But hope is fragile, and cruelty has a way of showing its true face. The first signs were already more than enough to tell me the truth. My son no longer saw me as a father. He saw me as a burden. And soon he would prove it in a way that would break me completely. New Year's Eve came. For me, it had always been a night of hope, a night where family sat together and counted down into the new year. I thought maybe this year would be different. I thought maybe my son would sit with me, talk to me, remember the old days when he was a child, waiting for fireworks with wide eyes. I hoped for even one small moment of respect. But what I got was betrayal so deep it turned my heart to stone. The house was full of his friends. Music blasted, laughter shook the walls, glasses clinked and bottles spilled. They treated the house like their playground. I sat quietly in the corner, trying not to disturb them. I told myself, at least I am here, at least I am part of it in some way. But to them, I was invisible. Worse than invisible, I was unwanted. As the night grew late, the countdown to midnight began. I stood slowly, my legs stiff, and started to walk toward the staircase. I wanted to go upstairs and stay out of the way. I thought leaving them space would stop my son from being angry at me. But he saw me, and instead of letting me pass in peace, he snapped. He walked over, drunk on pride and liquor, and shoved me hard. His voice was loud enough for all his friends to hear. "Get out of the way, old man. You don't belong here." Then, in front of everyone, he lifted his foot and kicked me square in the chest. The force sent me stumbling backwards. I lost my grip on the rail and fell down the stairs. The crash was loud. My back slammed against the steps. My head hit the wall. My body folded against the cold floor at the bottom of the staircase. Pain shot through me like fire. My ribs ached. My arms trembled. For a moment, I thought I would not be able to breathe again. Above me, I heard it. Laughter. Not shock. Not fear. Laughter. My son's voice rang out, laughing at the sight of his father lying broken at the bottom of the stairs. His friends joined in, some nervous, some cruel, all of them entertained. To them, I was not a man. I was not a father. I was a joke on New Year's Eve. I tried to move, but my body screamed. I looked up at him, and he smirked down at me, glass in hand, pride in his eyes. "Dead weight," he muttered again, just loud enough for me to hear. Then he turned back to his friends as if nothing had happened. Music rose again. Laughter filled the room. Fireworks exploded outside, lighting the sky with color, while I lay in darkness at the bottom of my own stairs. That was the moment something inside me broke, not just my bones, but my heart. I remembered the nights I worked double shifts so he could sit warm and watch those same fireworks as a boy. I remembered carrying him on my shoulders, his small hands gripping my hair, his voice shouting with joy at every spark in the sky. And now, years later, that same boy had kicked me down the stairs and laughed while I lay bruised and shaking. It was no longer just disrespect. It was violence. It was betrayal. It was cruelty in its purest form. That night, at the bottom of the stairs, I understood the truth. My son was gone. The boy I raised had died long ago, replaced by arrogance, greed, and hate. And the man standing at the top of the stairs was no son of mine. I lay at the bottom of the stairs, body twisted, breath short, ears ringing. My ribs burned, my back screamed, and my head felt heavy as if the world itself was pressing down on me. Above me, I heard the countdown begin. 10, 9, 8. Voices filled with cheer. The numbers echoed through the house like knives cutting into me. Every cheer, every clap, every laugh was another reminder that I was nothing in their eyes. Midnight was coming for them with joy. For me, it came with humiliation. The floor was cold under me. The tiles felt harder than stone. I tried to lift myself, but pain chained me down. My arms shook, my chest tightened, and I could barely move. I looked up the staircase, and all I saw were shadows of my son and his friends, laughing, drinking, dancing. None of them looked down at me. None of them offered a hand. To them, I wasn't even worth a glance. When the clock struck 12, the fireworks outside thundered. The sky lit up with color, with bursts of red and gold. I had once worked double shifts to make sure my son could watch those fireworks with warmth and food in his stomach. I had once stood outside with him in the cold, holding his small hand, whispering that the new year would always bring hope. Now I lay broken in my own home, watching light flash through the windows, knowing the same sun had put me on the ground with his own kick. I remembered the sacrifices I made on New Year's Eve long ago. Nights when others celebrated, I worked in factories and warehouses, sweating under harsh lights so my family could celebrate without worry. While others drank champagne, I carried heavy loads. While others counted down, I counted coins. All of it so my son could have a better future. That memory clashed with the present, where the same boy I raised now celebrated my pain. Humiliation does not always come with strangers. The deepest kind comes from family, from blood. To be kicked by the child you fed, to be laughed at by the one you raised, to be called worthless in your own house. That night, lying there as fireworks exploded outside, I felt the full weight of humiliation. It was not just pain in my body, it was pain in my soul. But I kept my mouth shut. I did not cry. I did not beg. I did not shout for help. My silence was my shield. My silence was my strength. While they laughed above me, I lay still, thinking. Each spark of pain in my body was a reminder. Each bruise was a memory, and each second of humiliation was fuel. The countdown ended with cheers and kisses upstairs. The music grew louder. Glasses clinked. My son shouted with pride to his friends, as if nothing had happened. To him, I was not even worth remembering. He thought the night was his. He thought he had erased me with one kick. He thought I would crawl away and remain small forever. But lying there, ribs aching, I knew something he did not. I knew the house was mine. I knew the deed was still in my name. I knew the accounts were under my control. I knew the roof he laughed under existed because of me. And while he thought he had humiliated me into nothing, the truth was different. He had reminded me of the power I still held. At the bottom of those stairs, I was not just a broken old man. I was the owner. I was the builder. I was the father who still had the power to change everything. And that night, humiliation turned to something sharper. Resolve. My son thought his kick erased me. He thought pushing me down those stairs made me small, weak, useless. He thought laughter from his friends was the final nail in my coffin. But what he forgot was the truth written on paper. What he forgot was the name on every deed, every account, every title. My name. Not his. Mine. The house he strutted around in as if it was his castle did not belong to him. Every wall, every door, every brick was still in my name. I had worked for decades to buy it, to pay it off, to make it a home. He had not paid a cent toward it. Yet he walked like the king of it. He brought his friends there as if it was his. He threw parties in rooms I built with my sweat. But on paper, it was mine. All mine. The accounts he dipped his hands into were also mine. He used my cards. He leaned on my savings. He thought the money flowed freely because of his own work. But the truth was, it came from me. I had spent years saving, cutting corners, hiding pennies to build those accounts. He thought he had power because he had access. But access is not ownership. Control is not his right. Every dollar was mine to give or take away. Even the car parked outside, the one he bragged about, the one he drove his friends around in, was registered in my name. The insurance was in my name. The taxes were paid by me. He thought he was living free, but he was living on ground I provided. He mocked me while standing on my shoulders. He kicked me while eating from my hand. He called me dead weight while depending on me for every comfort he had. Lying at the bottom of the stairs that night, bruised and broken, I saw the truth clearly. My son believed he had stripped me of worth, but in reality, I still held all the cards. He thought power was his laughter, his arrogance, his strength over my frail body. But real power was my ability to erase his world with a single decision. He forgot that I could sell the house, drain the accounts, and cut him off in silence. He forgot that I was the one who gave, and I could be the one who took away. He thought a kick made me powerless. But what he did not understand was that power is not in legs or fists. Power is in paper. Power is in signatures. Power is in names. And my name was everywhere. That was when the humiliation began to fade, replaced by cold clarity. The bruise on my ribs hurt, but it was nothing compared to the fire in my chest. He thought he had destroyed me. Instead, he had reminded me of the control I still had. He had laughed, called me nothing, treated me like dirt. But soon he would learn. Soon he would see what happens when you forget the hand that built your world. He thought I was finished, but he had forgotten the most important truth. I still owned everything. That night, after the noise upstairs faded and the fireworks outside burned out, I lay awake in my room, staring at the ceiling. Every breath hurt. My ribs ached, my back throbbed, but my mind was clear. My son thought he had ended me with a kick. In truth, he had set me free. All the years of sacrifice, all the nights of worry, all the hope I carried for him had died at the bottom of those stairs. What was left inside me was not hope, it was resolve. I understood finally that the boy I had raised no longer existed. In his place stood a man who saw me as nothing. A man who would kick his father down the stairs on a holiday, meant for family. A man who laughed as his friends watched. A man who believed my worth was gone because my body was weak. There was nothing left to save in him. No love, no respect, only arrogance. I had spent my whole life giving without asking anything back. But now I knew I had to stop. I had to stop feeding the hand that struck me. I had to stop sheltering the man who mocked me. I had to take back what was mine and leave him to face the world he thought he owned. That was my decision. It came quietly. No rage, no yelling, no grand speech. Just a cold, steady thought that hardened like ice. I would vanish. I would take everything he lived on and disappear. I would leave him in the house he thought was his, only to wake up and find it gone. I would leave him with the echo of his own cruelty and nothing else. I knew the steps already. The papers were in my name. The accounts were in my control. The lawyer knew me, trusted me, and had already drawn up documents for other matters. All I had to do was walk in and sign. No drama. no noise. One signature at a time, and the life he had built on my back would disappear. That was the power he had forgotten. That was the weapon he had handed me. I decided then that there would be no warning, no second chance, no note on the table. He would not even know I had left until it was too late. He would not be able to call me, find me, or beg me. When I was gone, I would be gone for good. The man he kicked on New Year's Eve would disappear like a shadow at sunrise, and the son who mocked him would wake up alone. I smiled a little in the dark, not out of joy, out of certainty. For the first time in years, my path was clear. My humiliation would end. My silence would become my revenge. My disappearance would be my justice. The next morning, I woke before the sun. My ribs still hurt from the fall, but my hands were steady. The house was quiet. My son slept upstairs, still sure that the world belonged to him. I moved slowly, packing a small bag, just clothes, papers, and what I truly needed. I looked around the house one last time. Every corner, every chair, every window had been paid for by my sweat. He thought it was his kingdom. He had no idea it was about to vanish beneath his feet. I put the bag by the door and walked out without a sound. The street was empty, the air cold, the sky still dark. My breath came out in clouds. I hailed a taxi to my lawyer's office. The driver didn't ask questions. I sat in silence, holding the folder on my lap. Inside were the deeds, the bank statements, the account numbers. Everything he thought was his was in my hands. The lawyer met me at the door. He knew something had changed the moment he saw my face. I sat down in his office and told him, plain and simple, sell the house, empty the accounts, transfer everything out of his reach. Today he blinked but did not argue. He had seen families tear each other apart before. He understood I was done. We started with the house. It was mine entirely. My name was on the deed. There were no loans, no liens. It was clean. Within an hour, he had buyers lined up, investors who bought houses fast. I signed the papers without hesitation. Each signature felt like cutting a rope that had tied me to my son's cruelty, rope that had kept me in a house where I was mocked. With every page signed, that rope loosened. Then the accounts. He had access because I had allowed it. But access can be revoked. I stopped every transfer, closed every joint account, changed every password. I moved the money to new accounts he could never find. Money he had used to pay his bills, to host his parties, to keep his image. Gone. In one morning, I erased the life he had built on my back. The lawyer asked where I wanted the funds sent. I told him to divide it. Some to secure accounts under my name, some to charities, some to relatives who had shown me respect. Not a cent to my son, not a cent to anyone who had laughed at me. The lawyer nodded and made the calls. He moved the money with cold efficiency. By midday, it was done. The house was no longer mine on paper. The money was gone from the accounts my son used. The car, too. It was registered in my name, and I called the insurance company to cancel the policy. Without insurance, it could not legally be driven. Piece by piece, I dismantled the false kingdom my son had built. I did all of it without a single raised voice, without a single threat. Just paper, just signatures, just the quiet power he had forgotten I had. When everything was done, I left the lawyer's office and walked to the station. My bag was light, but my heart felt lighter. For the first time in years, I was free. No more insults, no more mockery, no more waiting for respect that would never come. I bought a ticket out of the city, a one-way ticket. I did not tell anyone where I was going. I did not leave a note. My son would wake up in his castle and find it empty. Empty of me, empty of money, empty of ownership. The execution was clean, silent, permanent. He would not see it coming. He would not even understand at first. But when the eviction notices arrived, when the bank cards failed, when the car sat useless, when the house was no longer his, he would know. He would know exactly why. And I would be gone. I left before the sun rose the next day. The house was still, the windows dark, the silence heavy. My son was asleep upstairs, dreaming of his parties, his friends, his power. He did not know that while he slept, everything had changed. The house he thought was his was already sold. The accounts he thought were endless were already empty. By the time he opened his eyes, I would be gone. I moved quietly through the hallway, my bag over my shoulder. Every step echoed memories, the walls I had painted, the stairs I had built, the rooms I had filled with food and warmth. All of it had been mine once. All of it had been a gift. But gifts have limits. I had reached mine. I stopped at the bottom of the stairs and looked up. The same staircase he had kicked me down days earlier. My ribs still hurt, but my heart was stronger. I felt no need to climb it again. I would never stand at the top of those stairs as his victim. I would never sit in that house waiting for respect. My time there was over. I opened the front door slowly. The cold air of morning hit my face. It was sharp, but it felt clean. Freedom always does. Outside, the street was empty. No neighbors, no noise, just the pale light of dawn. I stepped out and closed the door without looking back. No goodbye, no note, no trace. I walked to the station with my bag. My legs were weak, but my mind was steady. Every step away from that house was a step away from humiliation. Every step toward the station was a step toward my new life. I did not plan to call him. I did not plan to be found. I was done. At the station, I bought a one-way ticket to a town he had never heard of. Cash only, no paper trail. I sat on the bench and waited, breathing in the cold air. For the first time in years, my heart did not race with worry. It beat slow and calm. When the train arrived, I boarded without hesitation. I sat by the window and watched the city fade. The streets, the houses, the skyline, all of it slipping away like smoke. I had built my life in that place, but now it belonged to the past. Ahead was something new. I did not tell anyone where I was going, not a single friend, not a single relative, no forwarding address, no phone calls, no clues. I wanted my disappearance to be total. He would not be able to trace me. He would not be able to call me. He would not be able to apologize. I imagined him waking up. First the confusion, then the letters, then the panic. I imagined him running to banks, only to find empty balances. Running to the car, only to find it useless. Running through the house, only to realize it was no longer his. He would search for me. He would beg. But all he would find was silence. As the train rolled on, I looked at my hands. They were old, veined, and tired, but they still belonged to me. For decades they had worked to build his life. Now they had signed the papers that ended it. Those same hands had carried him as a baby and carried my bag away as an old man. There was a kind of justice in that. I did not smile. This was not joy. This was peace. Quiet, steady peace. The kind that comes when you finally stop bleeding for someone who will never care. The departure was complete. When my son finally woke up that morning, he had no idea his world had already collapsed. He came down the stairs, hungover from his party, expecting breakfast on the table and music still in the air. But the house was silent. My bag was gone. My chair was empty. He thought nothing of it at first. He believed I had slipped away quietly, like I always did. But this time was different. This time, silence was not weakness. It was the sound of everything being taken from him. He reached for the fridge, found it nearly empty. He shrugged it off. Then he checked the mailbox, and that was when the first crack opened. Letters. Legal letters. Notices with words he could not ignore. Sale of property. Change of ownership. Accounts closed. He froze, reading them again and again, not understanding how it could be possible. But it was real. The house he stood in was no longer his. The bank accounts he relied on had been emptied. His world was gone overnight. He rushed to the bank, still in yesterday's clothes. At the counter, he handed over his card. Declined. He tried another. Declined. He begged the clerk to check again. The clerk looked at him coldly and said, "These accounts have been closed. Funds transferred." My son's face went pale. For the first time in his life, he realized the truth. Everything he thought was his had only been borrowed from me, and I had taken it back. Neighbors began to whisper. They had seen me leave at dawn. They had seen the letters delivered. Word spread fast. The father sold the house, they said. The son has nothing now. Some shook their heads. Others laughed quietly. Everyone knew what he had done to me on New Year's Eve. They knew about the kick. They knew about the fall. Now they saw justice with their own eyes. His friends stopped answering his calls. They had come to his parties for free food, free drinks, free comfort. But now, with no house, no money, no father behind him, he was nothing to them. They moved on to the next man with money. My son, once proud and arrogant, now sat alone in empty rooms. Bills piled up. The electricity bill, the water bill, the insurance, all of them in my name, all of them canceled when I left. He had no money to pay. One by one, the services shut down. Lights went dark, water stopped running. The house he had mocked me in turned into a shell. The eviction came fast. New owners arrived with papers. Strangers at the door told him to leave. He shouted, he argued, but the law was not on his side. He had no rights to the house, no claim, no power. He packed his things in shame while neighbors watched from their windows. The same neighbors who once heard his laughter now saw his silence. The same son who kicked his father now carried boxes into the street. Relatives came, but not to help. They came to point fingers. "You did this," they said. "You brought this on yourself." They remembered the way he treated me. They remembered his arrogance. None of them offered him shelter. None of them offered him money. They left him with his shame. In the market, whispers grew louder. "That's the one who kicked his father. That's the one who lost everything overnight." People avoided him. Shopkeepers frowned at him. His name became a lesson. Parents told their children, "Respect your elders or you'll end up like him." His cruelty had become his curse. At night, he sat alone. No friends, no money, no house, no father. The laughter he once shared was gone. The arrogance he once wore was gone. He had nothing left but regret. And regret does not pay bills. Regret does not buy food. Regret does not warm you in winter. He had traded his future for one kick, one laugh, one night of pride. The fallout was complete. He had thought he was strong. He had thought he was untouchable. But without me, he was nothing. And now the whole world could see it. Justice did not come with fists or shouting. It came with silence, with papers, with my absence. My son thought a kick could erase me. He thought laughter could bury me. But the truth is simple. I built everything he stood on, and I took it away the same way I built it, with my own hands. That was justice. When I left, I did not look back. I moved to a small town far away, where no one knew my name and no one knew his. I rented a modest room, paid in cash, and started a new life with peace I had not felt in years. I no longer lived under a roof filled with insults. I no longer ate in silence while my son mocked me. I no longer had to walk the halls of a house where respect had died. My days were simple, but they were mine. My nights were quiet, but they were peaceful. That was worth more than any luxury. The money I kept for myself was enough. I had saved for decades, and I had secured accounts he could never touch. I lived with dignity, knowing that my work would never again be wasted on arrogance. I gave some of what I had to charities, to shelters, to people who respected the value of kindness. Every dollar that once fed his pride now fed the hungry. Every cent that once fueled his laughter now brought warmth to strangers who would never mock me. That was justice, too, redirecting my sacrifices to those who deserved them. Meanwhile, he carried the weight of his own cruelty. He searched for me, but I had left no trail. He begged relatives, but they turned their backs. He knocked on neighbors' doors, but they closed them. He wanted forgiveness, but forgiveness is not owed. Respect must be given before it can be received. He had lost his chance. His name became a lesson in the town we once lived in. Parents told their children the story, the son who kicked his father on New Year's Eve, and the father who vanished with everything. They said, "Respect your elders, or you will lose more than money. You will lose your soul." His arrogance had become his shame. His cruelty had become his curse. He would never escape it. I lived out my days in peace. I woke when I wished, walked in quiet streets, watched the seasons change without fear or insult. My body was old, but my heart was calm. I no longer feared humiliation because I had removed myself from the hands that delivered it. That was my victory. That was my justice. He never saw me again. Not once. Not in the market, not in the street, not in his dreams. For him, I became a ghost. For me, I became free. He was left with guilt, poverty, and silence. I was left with dignity. Final thought, he kicked me down the stairs on New Year's Eve. I sold the house, emptied the accounts, and vanished forever. He never saw me again, and that was my justice.